The next morning, the sun rose late. Thick grey clouds covered the distant pine ridge, casting a cold shadow over the porch. Elias woke up as usual. No alarm. No one needed to remind him. Habit was no longer a choice. It was the only way for a new day to begin without making his heart feel empty. He started the fire, poured water into the kettle, then quietly placed 3 cups on the table. The first was his. Its handle turned to the right. The second, for the other one, was placed opposite him. Its handle turned outwards, as it was every morning. The third, newly taken from the cupboard, was still a bit dusty. Elias wiped it with his sleeve, then set it at the edge of the table, closest to the door. No words, no thoughts, just action. When the water boiled, Elias poured coffee into each cup with his left hand, slowly, steadily, without spilling. Dusty sat waiting by the door, his dim eyes gazing out at the valley, as always. But this morning, its tail gave a slight wag. Just one. The boy, Tommy, did not arrive right away. Elias sat down in his chair, taking small sips from his cup. On the table, the other 2 cups were still steaming. One for the person who never came back. One for the person who might never come again. The wind rustled across the porch. Elias glanced up at the line of trees before him. A small figure, wearing an old baseball cap, was approaching. The boy didn't look at the house, nor did he offer a greeting. He just walked straight to the long bench next to the fence, where Elias usually stacked small bundles of firewood at the end of the week. Tommy sat down, his back slightly hunched, his hand gently crumpling a wrinkled piece of paper in his pocket. Elias stood up, walked out the door, carrying the 3rd tin cup, which had cooled a little by now, and passed it over the fence, placing it down beside the boy. He didn't speak, didn't wait for him to take it. Tommy looked at the cup of coffee, his fingers tapping lightly on its rim, as if contemplating something much bigger than whether to drink it or not. Then he touched it, raised it, and took a sip, wincing at the bitterness. But he didn't put it down. He drank more, slowly, as if trying to believe in something after many years of not daring to believe. Elias returned to the porch. He didn't look at Tommy, nor did he smile. He just poured more coffee into his own cup and continued to sit as usual, facing the empty chair between 2 cups that did not belong to him. Dusty left his spot and walked over to Tommy. No bark, no wagging. It just lay down by the boy's feet, breathing steadily. By the time the sun was fully up, all 3 cups of coffee had been drunk from. 1 cup untouched, 1 cup with fresh lip marks, and 1 cup still in the old man's hands, his eyes no longer sharp, but never ceasing their quiet observation. That morning, Elias did not turn on the radio. There was only the soft sound of the wind, the quiet stir of
his lashes. For a second he saw her, not as a threat, but as something else. He didn't move, but his body relaxed just enough for the tremor in his leg to stop. Night came. Temperatures dropped fast in the desert. The same sun that scalded flesh now left breath hanging like smoke. One by one, the lions settled down in a wide half-circle. None of them touched him. None tried to scare him off. They simply stayed. And the dog survived the night. By morning, he opened his eyes to find the lioness still there. She had not moved. Neither had he. Then something impossible happened. One of the juveniles, a lanky female with big ears and oversized paws, trot-hopped forward. She dropped a chunk of dried meat near his paw. He stared at it for a long time. Smelled it. Then, as if the muscle memory of hunger remembered before the brain did, he ate. slowly, cautiously. But he ate. Far off, beyond the ridgelines and dunes, 2 rangers tracked movement through satellite heat signatures. Something unusual, something large. They assumed lions. They had no idea what else they were about to discover. Because deep in the heart of a desert no one dares cross without convoy or camel, a German shepherd lay beside a lioness, alive against all odds. No collar, no handler, just instinct and exhaustion. And for reasons even nature couldn't explain, the predators had not destroyed him. They had surrounded him and made room. That morning, as the lions rose to move, the shepherd did too. He stood, not confidently, not gracefully, but with determination. Not because he trusted them, but because they moved with purpose, and when you have nothing left, sometimes purpose is enough. So he followed, behind them, on uncertain legs, 1 dog, 7 lions. Something ancient had shifted in the sand, and far away a ranger named Val Cruz rubbed her eyes, squinted at the prints through her binoculars and muttered, "That can't be right." But it was, and it was only the beginning. At dawn, the wind shifted. Cooler air skimmed across the dunes, stirring the sand into hushed whispers. The lions stirred with it, one by one, rising with the precision of creatures who knew what it meant to survive each day as a gift, not a guarantee. The German shepherd lay exactly where he had fallen the night before, still half-curled, half-collapsed in the shallow cradle of sand where the lioness had settled beside him. Her warmth had kept the cold away. Her presence had kept the scavengers at bay. But now she moved, slow and graceful, her massive frame stretching as the sun broke over the horizon. He opened his eyes, still alive. For a long moment, the shepherd didn't move. His limbs felt stiff, but it was more than that. He was watching. Not like prey, not exactly like a soldier. Something in between. He'd slept, fitfully, shallow breaths, yet it was the most rest he'd had in days. The last thing he remembered clearly before that night was the relentless sun and the taste of dust. But now he remembered something else. The lioness. Her eyes. Not cold, not pitying. Just present. Across the sand, 2 juvenile lions paced, flicking their tails, playful and alert. One of them, tall-legged, awkward, curious, trot-walked over with something clutched in her jaw. Dried meat, strips of old kill, likely antelope or kudu, tough but edible. She dropped it just in front of the shepherd, then stepped back. He didn't move at first. His instincts were tangled. He was trained to wait for commands that no longer came, trained to obey men with whistles and leashes and radioed orders. But none of that applied here. Here, survival didn't wait for permission. Slowly, Ghost lowered his head, his first real movement of the morning, and sniffed the offering. It smelled of sand, blood, time. He licked it once, then again, then took it into his mouth and chewed, tentatively, and something inside him flickered. Not trust, not yet, but survival. The meat disappeared in seconds. His stomach, dormant for days, lurched awake like an engine trying to turn over. He coughed, gagged slightly, then stood on wobbly legs and retched into the sand. Nothing came up. The juvenile lioness sat nearby, watching. The lioness who had guarded him during the night returned and brushed past the juvenile without a sound. Then she moved to a rise in the sand, scanning the horizon. The shepherd followed her gaze. The land was impossibly wide. No fences, no shouting voices, no cages, just heat and silence and the low sound of wind shifting stories through dunes. He stood. Shaky, yes, sore, absolutely, but upright. The lions didn't encircle him this time. They didn't test him or drive him out. Instead, they moved as a loose unit, ignoring him the way the wild often does, acknowledging without accepting, alert without aggression. He was not one of them. But he wasn't a stranger anymore. And that made all the difference. By mid-morning, they walked. The sun climbed again, and with it came the heat, but the lions knew where to go. Between the dunes and the rocky ridgelines, a path emerged, less trail than instinct. Ghost followed at a distance, favoring his left side, the limp still pronounced. He didn't know where they were going, but they moved with purpose. Purpose was something he recognized. He'd had it once too. Around midday, the Pride reached a shallow basin where the wind carried the scent of water. A buried spring. Ghost saw the signs, scattered prints in the dust, darker patches of sand. He hesitated as the lions moved forward. They reached a pool tucked under a jagged outcrop and began to drink. Ghost hung back. He sniffed the air, tracking other scents: fox, hyena, snake, antelope. None immediate. But one scent stopped him cold. Man. The trace was faint. Burnt rubber. Gun oil. A type of antiseptic. He turned his head, eyes narrowing. Somewhere to the north, just beyond his senses, had been humans. Recently. Then he looked back at the lions. The youngest cub, still not yet full-sized, lapped water and glanced back at him, tongue dripping. That flicker inside him pulsed again. He stepped forward. When the lions moved off, Ghost lowered his muzzle to the water and drank. It was cold, clean, and he drank until his sides ached. He looked up and met the gaze of the alpha male, who had remained still the entire time. The big lion's mane rippled slightly in the hot wind. He didn't blink, just stared. Ghost held his gaze for a beat longer than instinct advised. Not defiance, just acknowledgement. Then the lion turned, and they kept moving. Far away, miles from where the sand still held the imprint of paws and paw-like prints, a drone passed overhead. In a field office outfitted with satellite feeds and motion sensors, a ranger named Valerie Cruz leaned in over the monitor. "There it is again," she said, pointing. "A canine footprint, following lions." Her partner, Malik, frowned. "Out here? No wild dogs this deep in, and there's no packs nearby." "Exactly," Valerie said. She enlarged the screen, squinting at the resolution. "This one's bigger, limping, looks like a shepherd." Malik laughed dryly. "You think a German shepherd is walking with a lion pride? That's not real." Valerie didn't laugh. "I think we need to check it out." Back in the desert, as the Pride huddled under the sliver of shade beneath a sun-blasted rock face, Ghost lay on the outer ring, not quite part of the circle, but not apart from it either. His ears twitched to the smallest sounds. Something was waking inside him again. Not orders, not commands, instinct. And that was something the wild could respect. By the fourth day, Ghost began to dream again. Not the aimless, fragmented dreams of starvation and heat stroke. These were sharper, more cruel. Fires bursting in the night. Gunfire. Metal scraping against concrete. The choked rattle of a leash tightening. And through it all, the clipped voice of command. Heal. Find. Attack. Hold. He'd obeyed. Every time. But the mission had gone sideways. Something about a wrong signal. A second explosion. The humans had scattered. When it was over, they hadn't come back for him. Or maybe they had, and he had already run too far to find out. That was a different desert. Another place. Another war. But some things stick. The way pain feels in the pores when running over gravel. The way blood smells when it's not your own. The way silence hangs after a human betrays you. That part he carried still. But here, in this raw and feral wilderness, silence meant something different. It wasn't the absence of orders, it was the presence of choice. Ghost awoke before the Pride, the sun not yet cracked over the horizon. His ears twitched. Something small had moved near a cluster of rocks 50 yards away. Not dangerous. Maybe a desert hare. But he'd noticed. That was new. He stood, stretched with a low groan, and tested the sand with his front paw. Firmer today. His limp had lessened. The stiffness in his hind legs remained, but movement was smoother, more confident. He turned his nose into the wind. Dust. Snake. Something dead, but also something distant. Faint traces of rubber and fuel again. Humans, maybe days old, maybe closer. He filed it away. The memory, the shape of the scent. He didn't need orders to recognize the signs anymore. Now he just needed awareness. Instinct was replacing discipline, the kind no handler had ever taught him. As the lions stirred, one of the juveniles wandered toward him, tail swishing with idle energy. The young lion paused, sniffed at Ghost, then moved on, uninterested. But not all eyes were so casual. Raka watched him from the ridge above. The alpha male was older than the rest. His mane, once thick and full, was now threaded with silver. His body bore the slow movements of age, stiff joints, deliberate steps, but his eyes were razor sharp. He saw everything, especially Ghost. Raka didn't snarl or bare teeth. He didn't need to. His stillness was a weight. Every time Ghost met his gaze, he felt it, not fear, but calculation. They weren't allies. Not yet. Raka hadn't forgotten what Ghost was. A predator who walked like prey. A creature that didn't belong. Ghost didn't challenge him. But he didn't cower either. He simply existed at the edge of the circle. Midday turned blistering. The pride moved toward higher ground, toward a grove of dry acacias that cast broken shadows. Ghost trailed behind, head low, scanning the perimeter. He paused once, ears alert. There, a ripple in the sand. A lizard. Number 2 heavy. His eyes narrowed. A snake slithered just beneath the surface, pale tan scales blending perfectly with the earth. A sidewinder, venomous, coiled near the sleeping cubs. Ghost froze. The lions hadn't noticed. The cubs were too close. The sidewinder shifted again, inching towards them. Ghost didn't think. He acted. In one quick stride, he closed the distance, growled low, and snapped his jaws down on the sand just behind the slithering shape. The snake hissed and struck, grazing his snout, but he pinned it with a paw and clamped down with a sharp shake. Dead. Blood pooled in the sand. The lioness nearest the cubs raised her head, ears flicking. She saw the remains, smelled the danger, and saw him, tail still raised, chest heaving from the strike. She didn't move toward him, just watched. Then, without fanfare, lowered her head again. Ghost backed away, licking at the small nick on his snout. It would swell, but not badly. He had moved fast enough to matter. The cubs resumed their nap, and Raka saw it all from the ridge. Later that night, when the air cooled and the pride huddled near a cragged outcrop, Raka approached. Not directly. Lions never do. He circled from behind, slow, deliberate. Ghost didn't flinch. He stood, eyes steady, ears back but not down. Raka stopped 6 feet away. They faced each other in silence. The lion's breath came slow, heavy. The old wounds in his side rose with each inhale, reminders of battles past. Ghost's tail was still. His stance low, but not submissive. Then Raka did something unexpected. He turned his head away first. Just slightly. Not a bow. Not submission, but acknowledgement. Then he returned to the center of the pride. Ghost watched him go. His heart beat slower, his legs steadied. He was still not one of them, but he was no longer nameless. And far across the dunes, in a ranger outpost carved into the edge of the Kalahari, Valerie Cruz reviewed satellite photos and paused at one strange image. Paw prints, massive ones, lion, but next to them, dog. She exhaled, leaned back in her chair, and murmured to herself, "Who the hell are you?" She didn't know yet, but the desert did. The desert changes at night. What had been a scorched plain under the punishing sun now cooled into a landscape of whispering shadows and brittle silence. The lions adapted easily. They stretched, yawned, and shifted in a silent language of muscle and breath. Darkness didn't threaten them. It belonged to them. But Ghost had never trusted the dark. He sat apart from the pride, near the edge of a dry ravine, ears sharp, eyes narrowed. His coat bristled faintly in the cold wind. The sounds of the Kalahari at night were different, less predictable. Crickets chirped, owls called in low tones, and things moved without reason. And somewhere out there, something was wrong. He felt it first, not with his nose or ears, but in the old instinct that never left. That same crawl at the base of his neck before gunfire, before fire. His breathing slowed. The wind shifted, and he smelled them. Hyenas, not one or two, a pack. It started as distant chattering, like laughter twisted through broken glass. Then growls, then silence again. Ghost stood. Across the basin, the lionesses perked up, ears rotating, tails twitching. Raka stood from where he'd been resting, his mane ruffled by the night breeze. His eyes scanned the shadows with unblinking focus. The cubs didn't understand yet. They were still tangled beside their mothers, not sensing what was approaching. Ghost looked at them, then at the ridge, then back to the darkness. The pride shifted into formation. The lionesses stood shoulder to shoulder, bodies coiled. Raka moved to the front, his bulk silent as a boulder rolling downhill. But there was a gap, barely noticeable, between the flank and the edge of the dune where the ravine dipped low. It was a perfect entry point. Ghost moved before he thought. He darted to the breach, placing himself between it and the pride. His legs braced wide, body forward, head lowered, hackles raised. He didn't wait for a command. There wasn't one coming. Then they appeared. 7 hyenas crested the hill, eyes gleaming, teeth bared in that grotesque, manic grin their kind was known for. They stopped short when they saw the dog. The confusion was instant. They recognized the lions. The pride was expected. But this wasn't part of the rules. The lead hyena, larger than the rest, let out a hoarse bark and lunged forward. Ghost responded with a roar of his own. Not a lion's growl, not a bark from training drills. Something raw, from deep in his gut. A sound forged from pain, from hunger, from betrayal. A declaration, not today. The hyena hesitated. That's all Ghost needed. He charged. They clashed like 2 storms in dry grass, Ghost biting, snapping, dodging. One hyena clamped down on his shoulder. He twisted, using his weight to break free, landing a crushing bite on its ear. Then the pride roared behind him. The full fury of the lions descended. A lioness slammed into a hyena trying to circle wide. Another pounced with a feral snarl, pinning one to the ground with claws like knives. Raka moved through the chaos like fire, silent, precise, dominant. But Ghost didn't fall back. He fought in the shadows beside the lions, striking at flanks, keeping the hyenas from splitting the pride. His breath came in gasps, his muscles burned, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. A cub had wandered too close to the fight, wide-eyed and frozen. Ghost spotted him. A hyena broke off and charged the cub from the side. Ghost turned and ran harder than he thought possible. His legs screamed. The blood from his shoulder made it slippery to move, but he launched himself at the attacker and met it mid-stride, teeth first. They rolled in the sand. Blood sprayed. Dust exploded. When the hyena finally limped away, it did so dragging a torn ear and a bite mark across its ribcage. The rest fled seconds later. The lions didn't chase. The pride gathered, breathing heavy, bodies slick with dust and sweat. Wounds would be licked. Scars would stay. Ghost stood trembling. His side bled freely. His breath came in short, shaking bursts, but his stance remained firm, head held high. He had protected the cub. That mattered. That was enough. Then Raka stepped forward. The old lion's gaze was sharp, unreadable. For a moment, Ghost thought the moment was over, that maybe what he'd done still didn't count, that he'd always be the outsider, the anomaly. But Raka didn't growl. He didn't posture. Instead, he did something Ghost hadn't seen before. He nodded. Once. Slow. Measured. Heavy with meaning. Then he turned and walked back toward the pride. Ghost didn't follow right away. He stood there, chest rising and falling, blood drying on his coat. But something inside him had shifted, not in the way a soldier follows orders, in the way a creature chooses its place. And for the first time since the leash was cut, Ghost wasn't just surviving. He belonged. The morning air was crisp for the desert, a thin slice of chill before the heat returned like a hammer. Valerie Cruz crouched low near a wind-swept basin, her hand hovering over the edge of an unusually deep paw print. "Lion?" she said quietly. Malik, her partner on the field team, knelt beside her. "No doubt. But look at this." He brushed the sand aside with the edge of his palm. Another print. Different. Not feline. Valerie squinted. Canine. Wild dog. Number too large, too defined. And see this? She pointed to the back edge. Weight distribution's uneven, favoring the left leg. That's a limp. They both stood, looking over the stretch of red-gold earth. The lion tracks formed a loose pattern, moving in a crescent across the ridge. But the canine tracks moved with them, not ahead, not behind, right there, in step. "This doesn't make sense," Malik muttered. Valerie didn't respond. She was still staring at the tracks, brows furrowed. They followed the prints half a mile before they disappeared into hard rock. Wind had swept clean the finer details, but the story had already been told. A lion pride had passed through. And something else had walked with them. By late afternoon, their drone operator back at base sent them a thermal still from last night's flyover. Valerie enlarged it on her tablet, shielding the screen from the sun. 7 warm bodies, lion-shaped, predictable. But then, "What is that?" she said. There, offset slightly from the others, was a smaller heat signature. Upright posture, narrower, cooler than the cat's, but still hot-blooded. Its outline didn't belong. "That's a dog," Malik said flatly. Valerie said nothing. Her eyes were locked on the silhouette. Back at camp, she paced the perimeter while the rest of the crew reviewed equipment and checked traps. They weren't hunting. They were documenting. A long-term ecological survey of predatory movement in the southern Kalahari. But now they were tracking something more. Valerie set up 2 camera traps along a ridge where fresh scat suggested the pride might return. Then she added a third, angling it low. "You think it's just a coincidence?" Malik asked later by the fire. "No," she said. "I think we're seeing something no one's documented before. A symbiosis, maybe. Or something even stranger. Between a lion pride and a stray dog. Not just a stray," Valerie said, turning her face toward the firelight. "The tracks don't wander. That dog's moving with them, not from them, with them." Malik laughed dryly. "Come on, you're suggesting they've accepted it? That's not how lions work." "No," she said, "it's not how we think they work." That night, 30 miles away, Ghost rested beneath a low, thorny tree. The pride had settled in a shallow bowl surrounded by fractured rock. The cubs lay sprawled across their mothers, bellies full from a kudu kill earlier that morning. Raka stood watch from a rise. Ghost was restless. He paced along the edge of the group, his ears alert, nose working the breeze. There was a hum in the air, a faint electronic scent. Plastic. Oil. Battery residue. He froze. To his left, half buried in the sand near a game trail, something blinked red. A trail cam. He approached slowly, nose forward, steps precise. He'd seen cameras before, had been trained to sniff out explosives, wires, traps. But this wasn't war gear. It was wildlife tech. And still it unsettled him. He growled once, low. From the rise above, Raka lifted his head. Ghost turned away from the device and looked towards the horizon. Someone was watching. Far off, Valerie tapped through the cam's motion alert feed. The frame froze on a lioness moving past. Then another alert. She sat forward. It was the dog. The image was grainy but unmistakable. Ears erect, gait uneven, eyes reflecting the infrared flash like two ghosts in the dark. He wasn't just walking behind the lions, he was walking among them, and they weren't chasing him off. She zoomed in, jaw tightening. "That's not a fluke," she whispered. The next morning, the footage went to HQ. Her superior, Director Hayes, dismissed it. "Probably some feral dog trailing for scraps. Don't read into it." Valerie didn't argue. She just kept the original file and moved the cameras closer. She needed proof, not just for her team, for herself, because something told her, deep in her gut, that the shepherd in that frame wasn't just surviving. He was rewriting the rules, and she had to know why. The rangers moved at first light. They came in quiet, boots crunching over hard sand, keeping low as the sun pushed long shadows across the basin. Valerie led the small team, her binoculars pressed against her face, scanning the rocks ahead. She already knew where the pride was. The cameras had given them just enough to triangulate. Movement along the west-facing slope, a kill site near the dried riverbed. And then, the real anomaly. The German shepherd, still there, still moving with them. What she didn't expect was how close they'd be. 30 yards out, the first lioness came into view. She was lying in the shade of a broken acacia stump, body relaxed, but head up, alert. Behind her, the cubs shifted, tails flicking, unconcerned. And then he stepped into frame. The shepherd. He wasn't trailing. He wasn't scavenging. He was standing between the cubs and the outside world. Valerie felt her breath catch. Ghost locked eyes with her. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he stepped forward. Slow, measured, not aggressive, but deliberate. Valerie raised a hand to stop the ranger beside her from advancing. But the movement had already spooked someone. Behind them, a younger ranger, new to the field, too green to understand the weight of silence, flinched at the sight of the dog moving closer. He panicked, raised his rifle. The shot cracked the morning open. It wasn't aimed to kill. Just a warning, a tight snap into the dirt 2 feet ahead of the shepherd. But Ghost didn't flinch. He didn't retreat. He held his ground, body low, tail still, ears back, but not submissive. His hackles bristled. The message was unmistakable. This was not an accident. He was guarding the pride. Valerie shouted, "Stand down!" her voice cutting across the rocks like a whip. Too late. The lions had heard. Raka rose first, that heavy body unfolding in a motion that looked like slow thunder. He padded toward Ghost with purpose, placing himself just behind the dog's right flank. A lion's flank. Then the others followed. The lionesses formed up around the cubs, creating a wall of golden muscle and narrowed eyes. And in the center of it, standing firm, was Ghost. One of the rangers whispered, "He's with them." No one answered. They didn't have to. Valerie stepped forward, one slow foot at a time, her palms open. She kept her eyes low, away from Ghost, away from Raka. It was a posture of respect, not fear. The shepherd didn't growl, but his body was humming with restraint. Easy, she said softly, like talking to the wind. We're not here to take you. We just needed to see. Ghost held his position, not out of obedience, not because someone told him to, but because the cubs were behind him. And no matter what the humans thought, that mattered more. Behind her, the young ranger who fired the shot lowered his rifle with shaking hands. Malik hissed at him. "Do you even understand what you just did?" Valerie didn't look back. Her eyes stayed locked on the shepherd. She'd seen plenty of feral dogs, even former working dogs gone rogue after being abandoned. This was different. This wasn't scavenging. This wasn't survival instinct. This was a choice. She took another step. Ghost growled, low, controlled, like a warning drawn from the bottom of his lungs. Then something incredible happened. One of the cubs trotted forward, unaware of the tension in the air, and brushed its side against Ghost's leg before curling up at his feet, as if saying, "He's ours." The pride didn't stop it. Raka watched, and then slowly he sat down beside the dog, not above him, beside him. Valerie's voice came out just above a whisper. "This isn't territory anymore, it's family." Behind her, the radio on Malik's hip crackled. Headquarters, demanding a report. She didn't answer, because what could she say? That a war dog left for dead had found not just shelter, but loyalty? That lions had formed ranks around a different kind of guardian? That this wasn't natural, but somehow it was right? She looked once more at Ghost. His breathing had slowed. His stance was calm now. He'd assessed the threat, made the call. He knew they wouldn't take him today. Not while he still had someone to protect. Valerie stepped back, slowly, deliberately, then turned to her team. "We're leaving," she said. "Mom?" The young ranger stammered. "We're not going to escalate this," she said firmly. "We don't belong in that circle, not yet." And as they backed away, the shepherd watched them go. No triumph in his eyes, just vigilance, because loyalty has a cost, and Ghost had already paid more than most ever will. Valerie Cruz stared at the photo in her hand. It was blurry, taken from one of the motion-triggered cameras near the river bend, but the image was unmistakable. A German shepherd curled protectively around a lion cub, his body curved just enough to shield the tiny frame from the cold morning wind. Ghost. He wasn't just surviving, he was nurturing. The next slide made her chest tighten. The cub had a visible wound, claw marks, likely from a rough tumble with an older sibling. Ghost was gently licking the raw skin, head low, tail still. There was no mistaking the intention. This wasn't animal instinct. This was care. She looked up at the conference call on her laptop screen. The faces of 2 department heads flickered under the fluorescent light of the Regional Conservation Office. One wore a military-style buzz cut, the other a pair of wire-rimmed glasses and a tight frown. "You saw the footage," Valerie said, voice steady. "That's not a threat. That's a choice. That dog is part of their structure now. I've never seen behavior like this." "That's precisely why we need to extract him," said the man with the buzz cut. "Behavioral anomalies are data. If we don't study it, we lose the opportunity to understand it." "You mean cage it?" Valerie shot back. There was a pause. Then the man with glasses chimed in. "Cruz, I understand your sentimentality, but this animal is ex-military, possibly trained for combat. We have no idea what triggers might still be active. It could turn on the pride. It could turn on a human. You're not looking at a rescue. You're looking at a liability." Valerie's hand tightened into a fist. "You haven't seen what I've seen. That dog doesn't just coexist, he protects them. And your job," the man said flatly, "is to protect the ecosystem, not rewrite it." The screen went dark as the call ended. The next morning, she returned to the ridge. Ghost was there, as if waiting. He emerged from the tall grass with that same alert posture, calm but wary. His ears twitched once in recognition. Then he turned back, checking behind him. 2 cubs padded out after him. Valerie's chest ached. It wasn't affection. It was the way his head shifted constantly, scanning the horizon. The way he always positioned himself between them and anything unfamiliar. He wasn't their pet. He was their shield. She lifted her camera, but her hands didn't move. Instead, she crouched, watching. That's when the kudu herd scattered in the distance. A ripple of tension swept through the grass. Something was wrong. The lions hadn't noticed yet, but Ghost had. He stiffened, ears forward, nose twitching. Then he moved. Fast. Silently. He dashed ahead, placing himself at the edge of the thicket, where the wind carried the scent. Seconds later, Valerie saw it. 2 rogue males. Older, scarred, hungry. Not from this pride. Likely. Pushed out of another territory, now looking to make one of their own. The cubs were in danger. Ghost didn't wait. He barked once, loud, sharp, purposeful. The pride jerked to attention. Raka barreled forward in response, the lionesses forming a wall. But Ghost didn't back away. He stayed there, front line, growling deep, his entire body arched like a question nobody wanted to answer. The rogue males paused. It wasn't fear, it was confusion. They'd never seen this dog that moved like a lion. And then the pride surged forward. Ghost didn't fall behind. He ran with them. When the dust settled, the intruders were gone. Ghost returned limping, a gash on his shoulder where one of the males had struck. But he didn't whimper. He didn't lie down. Instead, he limped back to the cubs, nudged one with his nose, and then lowered himself beside them, guarding the back of the pride while they fed. That night, Valerie submitted a report. She didn't use scientific language. She didn't talk about specimen or deviation from behavior norms. She wrote one line. If you try to remove him, the pride will defend him. And I don't believe he'll run. The response from HQ came 12 hours later. Authorization. Capture and extract canine subject. Priority. Immediate. Use tranquilizer if necessary. She read it 3 times, then crumpled the page and tossed it into the fire. Malik found her at the observation post before dawn. You didn't forward the order? He said. No, she replied, eyes never leaving the horizon. I didn't. He waited, then asked quietly, What are you going to do? Valerie watched as Ghost trotted behind one of the lionesses, stopping when the youngest cub got too far ahead. He gently herded it back, using only his presence. She exhaled slowly. I'm going to give them time. Until someone higher up comes down here and looks that dog in the eyes, she said, and tells him he doesn't belong. Malik looked away, shaking his head. You know that won't happen. I know, she said, but maybe by then the world will have a different definition of family. And somewhere out in the savannah, Ghost lifted his head towards the wind. Not because he heard her, but because he felt something shift, the kind of silence that comes before a decision, and the cost that always follows. The sun hadn't yet risen, but the savannah pulsed with tension. The radio strapped to Valerie's belt crackled with code words she didn't want to hear, terms like encroachment, containment, neutralization. Somewhere just outside the acacia line, a tactical unit was preparing to close in. She gripped her binoculars, fingers stiff with dread. Below, in the golden basin near the watering hole, the pride was on the move. Not frantic, just alert. Raka had taken position at the edge, his head low, muscles tight. And Ghost, he stood between the cubs and the bush line. He knew. He always knew before anyone else. Malik's voice whispered behind her. They're coming from the east ridge, 5 minutes out. They want him boxed in. They're going to spook the pride, Valerie said. He'll fight. He's a dog, Malik muttered. What chance does he have? She turned. He's not just a dog. A ripple of motion caught her eye. Ghost shifted. Ears up, not towards the east, west. Then the bush exploded. A cheetah, lean, lightning fast, and desperate, shot out from the grass like a thrown spear, headed straight for the cubs. Valerie's heart stopped. So did Raka. Too far. But Ghost moved first. He lunged, intercepting the predator mid-charge. The impact was brutal, muscle against muscle, snarls splitting the dawn. The cheetah spun, claws slashing at Ghost's flank, but he held his ground. Teeth sank into the spotted neck just long enough to twist the attacker off course. A blur of tan and grey tumbled through the dust, then separated. Ghost skidded to his feet, chest heaving. The cheetah staggered, then fled. But Ghost didn't chase. He turned back, limping, to the cubs. The lionesses closed in, flanking him. He had done what they couldn't. He had saved their future. Then the pop echoed across the plain. A small, sharp sound. Tranquilizer. Ghost jerked. His body twisted as the dart hit just behind the shoulder blade. He tried to keep standing. He growled once, low, confused. His eyes scanned wildly, trying to find where it came from. He locked eyes with Valerie, and then his legs folded beneath him. He collapsed in the dust. The cubs cried out, circling him. Raka roared. But it wasn't an attack. It was grief. Valerie dropped her binoculars and ran. She didn't wait for clearance. She didn't care about orders. She dropped to her knees beside Ghost, brushing the coarse fur on his side. His breathing was shallow, but present. His eyes fluttered, barely conscious. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You did everything right." The lion stood back, watching. Not with fear, with something closer to reverence. Behind her, boots crunched on dry earth. 2 rangers in khaki approached cautiously, dart guns still lowered but ready. Malik ran after them, shouting, Don't touch him!" Valerie stood up, arms wide, blocking their path. "He's not going anywhere." One ranger hesitated. "Ma'am, orders are orders from someone who's never stood here, never watched a dog protect lions like his own blood, never seen an animal choose his family and give up everything for them." She pointed at Ghost. "Do you think this was instinct? That a dog trained for war came here and decided to become a babysitter to cubs out of conditioning?" Silence. Then she walked toward them. Calm, trembling. "This isn't a specimen. He's not a freak case. He's not a mistake in the wild. He is the wild now. You take him. You don't just break him. You break them too." She turned and pointed to the pride, to the way they were circling Ghost, nudging him gently, standing guard while he lay vulnerable. "They'll defend him, and he'll die thinking he failed." The older ranger swallowed hard. "What are you saying?" Valerie's voice cracked. "I'm saying you don't get to rewrite this. He chose them, and they chose him back." Malik stepped forward. "She's right. If you cage him now, it's not science. It's cruelty." No one spoke. A breeze rolled across the savannah. In the stillness, Ghost stirred. His paw twitched. One cub licked his ear. A lioness lay beside him, resting her massive head gently across his back. The men lowered their weapons. Valerie collapsed beside Ghost again, burying her face in his fur. And for the first time in her entire career, she broke protocol. She wept. Not just for Ghost, but for the cost of loyalty. For the truth that science couldn't measure. For the line between man and wild that had just been redrawn by a creature who wasn't supposed to exist in either world, but had found home in both, and refused to leave. The field hospital tent buzzed softly with the sound of a low fan and quiet radios. Ghost lay sedated but stable, hooked up to a line of IV fluids. His chest rose and fell slowly. Valerie sat nearby, her shirt still streaked with dried dust and streaks of sweat from the fight at the watering hole. Outside, the savannah glowed with the light of early evening, but beyond the golden grass, the world was shifting. It started with a single question. A child's voice, clear and piercing. Why are they trying to take the lion's hero away? It had come from a little girl visiting the ranger outpost as part of an educational tour. She stood outside the containment fence, hair in messy braids, clutching a plush lion toy. Her eyes were red from crying, her voice caught on a blend of confusion and anger. The camera that caught the moment wasn't even professional, just a tourist filming a family day out. But the footage hit the internet within hours. And then it went everywhere. Clips of Ghost limping back to the pride, of him shielding the cubs, of his still body sprawled in the dust while Lion stood sentinel, of Valerie's trembling voice saying, "He's not just a dog." The hashtags followed. Let Ghost stay. Lion Guardian. He chose the wild. The story snowballed. Wildlife forums, national news. CNN picked it up by morning, calling Ghost the shepherd of the savannah. Animal behaviorists scrambled to interpret the footage. Talk shows debated the ethics of removing a former military dog who had, seemingly of his own volition, assimilated into a pride of lions. Then came the politics. Valerie sat across from Regional Director Swain in a cramped office near the edge of the reserve. He looked exhausted. Grey, ringed eyes, collar wrinkled, inbox overflowing. "We're receiving threats," he said flatly. From both sides, threats. Protesters demanding Ghost be returned to the wild. Scientists demanding we study him. Diplomats asking if this is somehow about international dog training programs. Do you know how many jurisdictions this touches now? Defense, wildlife protection, international animal law. There's talk of military ownership. He was discharged. Valerie said, "Years ago. He's not a soldier anymore." Swain's tone softened, just slightly. "Then what is he?" Valerie took a breath. "He's a bridge." Swain leaned back. "That's poetic. Doesn't help with protocol." Behind them, a muted television screen replayed the moment the child had asked her question. "Why are they taking the lion's hero away?" That clip had been watched over 12 million times. "He didn't escape," Valerie said. "He didn't go rogue. He made a choice." Swain rubbed his forehead. "You realize what you're asking for?" "I'm not asking you to trust me," she said. "I'm asking you to trust him." There was a silence. Then, from the hallway, came a knock. Malik stuck his head in. "You need to come see this." Valerie followed him out, walking past the rows of reporters now camped outside the perimeter fence. There were signs, costumes, a man in a full lion onesie holding a Ghost for President banner. It was ridiculous and powerful. At the edge of the ridge, she saw them. Thousands of people who had gathered overnight, now spreading across the grassland like a second migration. Journalists, animal lovers, war vets, school kids with painted faces. And someone had brought the girl, the one who had asked the question. She stood beside her mother, holding a small cardboard sign, scrawled in crayon, "Let him stay. He's theirs now." Valerie didn't cry easily, but something in her throat caught. She turned slowly and walked back toward the tent where Ghost still rested. By nightfall, the debate reached Washington. A panel of military ethicists, wildlife officials, and veterinary behaviorists convened via Zoom, awkwardly attempting to define Ghost's legal status. Is he property? A soldier? A rehabilitated animal? Or something new? Valerie was invited to speak. She did not read from notes. Instead, she simply played a short video on her phone. Ghost lying in the dust, one cub curled against his side. His eyes closed, but his paw wrapped protectively over the tiny body. The camera zoomed out slowly, showing the lioness watching silently nearby. The room fell quiet. "Let him choose," Valerie said finally. "He already has." The following morning, the reserve issued a temporary stay. Ghost would not be removed, yet, but a decision had to be made. So Valerie offered an idea. Give him the choice, visibly. Open the enclosure, let him decide. A team of independent wildlife behaviorists scoffed. "He'll follow you, he's imprinted." Valerie shook her head. "He never followed me, he followed what was right." A small fenced gate was opened, leading out into the savannah where the pride waited beyond the hills. Dozens of cameras streamed the moment live. Ghost, now conscious but groggy, stood with effort. The cubs called softly from the distance. He glanced at Valerie once, then turned, and walked, not toward the vehicles, not toward the people, but toward the hills, to them, to his family. Cheers erupted. Online and across the world, people wept. Valerie didn't cheer. She stood still, heart breaking and swelling at the same time. He didn't look back. He didn't have to, because she knew. He was finally home. The morning sun spilled across the ridge, turning the tall grass into waves of molten gold. Wind rolled through the savannah like a whisper from an ancient world, rustling leaves, stirring dust, and carrying the scent of wildness and life. Somewhere in that breath of Africa, Ghost stirred. His eyes opened slowly, pupils adjusting to the warm light. His body was stiff, sore, but intact. The sedation had worn off, leaving only traces of chemical fog. At first all was quiet. Then came the sound of breathing, steady, close, familiar. He lifted his head. Around him, the pride had gathered. The lionesses stood in a circle, their bodies relaxed but alert. The cubs sat beside them, tails flicking, ears forward. And in the center, just inches from his muzzle, stood Raka, the young male lion, not quite a full adult, but already thick with muscle and instinct. They didn't growl. They didn't roar. Raka took one step forward and lowered his massive head. Slowly, deliberately, he pressed his forehead to Ghost's. No snarling, no dominance, just connection, just family. Ghost didn't move at first. His breath came out low and slow, chest expanding against the earth. Then gently, he pressed back. A soft, silent gesture. An answer. The circle shifted. The lionesses nudged the cubs closer. Ghost stood, still shaky, but solid, and walked among them. One of the smallest cubs licked the side of his muzzle. Another pawed at his tail. He didn't flinch. He didn't snarl. He wagged his tail once, slow and deliberate, the way he hadn't since his handler died years ago. From the ridge above, Valerie watched. Her boots were caked in red dust. Her uniform shirt clung to her in the dry heat, but she barely noticed. Binoculars dangled forgotten around her neck. Her eyes were locked on the pack. No, on him. She had cried already. But this was different. Her throat tightened as she whispered under her breath. He didn't choose freedom. He chose them. Behind her, the ranger team stood still. Malik removed his hat. Swain said nothing. The little girl from the protest clutched her mother's hand, watching with wide, shining eyes. From the valley below, Ghost turned. For one brief moment he looked back, not at the trucks, not at the people, but directly at Valerie. His amber eyes found hers. And then he howled. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't a growl. It was something older, deeper. A song that didn't belong to any one species. A cry that rose from his chest and echoed across the ridge, across the savannah, until the birds lifted in startled waves from the trees. Then he turned away from the humans for the last time. He walked toward the pride. Raka led the way, the lionesses flanking him, cubs bounding at their heels. And right in the middle, head high, tail steady, walked a single German shepherd, scarred and silent, his loyalty stitched into every footstep. They disappeared into the horizon as the sun dipped lower, bathing their path in flame and gold. A shepherd who had nothing left to guard except a pride that had chosen him. And he chose them. Forever. Some say it's unnatural, others call it a miracle. But what if loyalty doesn't need to look like us? To be real? What's your story with a loyal pet? If this tale touched something in your heart, if you believe loyalty comes in many forms, in fur and in silence, join us. Subscribe to the German Shepherd channel, where real stories of courage, healing, and unbreakable bonds live on. Because sometimes the most powerful heroes walk on 4 legs and don't need a leash to find their way home.